Redding is a beautiful place. We have national parks in 3 different directions, 2 world-class lakes. This is a sportsman's paradise, but it's also full of wonderful people. We have business leaders, community leaders, faith-based leaders, all of them working towards a singular goal, and that's to make this a great place to live. I wanted to showcase these people, give their perception of the place that they call home. This is AllRedding.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome very much.
Okay, my kid, my youngest, I have a glass like this that keeps things very cold. And he's like, oh man, I really want one of those, Dad. So we went looking around and he got one that has an Army logo on it because his big brother's in the Army.
Nice.
And so now he's going to see this one, which has a greater storage capacity. And I think my 7-year-old might try and pilfer this.
Nice. Nice. If he does, I can get him one. Okay. I've got a few of them. They're sitting in a box. I ordered some.
Does he need to do a podcast? Because if it's about Legos or Star Wars, he's your guy.
When can we book him?
Anytime.
I love Star Wars and Legos. You just nailed 2 of like my favorite things.
Yeah.
How old is he?
He's 7.
Okay.
So he's about as mature as I am.
Okay.
He is better at sword fighting than I am because we lightsaber battle.
Nice.
Somewhat frequently.
Yes.
And this morning he crafted his best from scratch Lego. He was up early and he showed it to me as I was heading out the door for work.
That's awesome. What did he craft?
He was a little concerned that while he had Boba Fett piloting his craft, that it didn't actually look like Boba Fett's craft, but it
Slave
had
one?
That's
a tough one.
He had some mobile shields on it, some mobile guns, and the best part was he had articulating landing gear, which
I like
was
that.
all crafted on his own. So
nice.
He liked
You got
it.
a future engineer.
Yeah, I
a
think
mechanical
so.
engineer.
My wife went to San Francisco yesterday to pick up her folks from a flight, and he went along, and they were a little early, and the Blue Angels were practicing. And
Oh, nice.
So they got to sit and watch the Blue Angels practice, and then they got to watch Fat Albert take off, which is their support aircraft. I'm not sure he's going to be an engineer that does engineering, but he might be an engineer as a method to get the Navy to teach him to fly jets, because that's what he wants to do after yesterday.
That's a great path. I have a friend who I worked with at the VA, and he was a former Navy, and his son went to school. His son's name's, I think it's Tanner. It's been a long time, but that's exactly what he did. He got a bachelor's degree in, I believe, mechanical engineering, and he went and he became a pilot in the Navy. Did a great job, so that's not, very, very doable, very, very cool. Pilots have a special place. Like, whoa. Pilot, huh? You know what I mean? It's kind of like saying black belt in some type of martial art. You're like, whoa, really?
Yep.
Yeah, black belt.
And they can always pull off, well, they have 2 things. An ability to wear aviators, like super confidently.
Yeah.
And then they have that pilot voice. Certainly.
Some do, some don't. I've met some.
See, I've never heard not the pilot voice. I have a dear friend who's a private pilot, quite accomplished and whatnot. And when you talk to him, he's just Matt. But then when Matt's talking to the tower, he's pilot Matt. And his pilot voice game is so strong. Like N477, runway 3, turn right. It's amazing. I don't even have it, right? That was just my same voice. That was Griff voice.
It was a little bit deeper. It was a little bit stronger. You hit your consonants a little bit harder.
Clearly, these guys have 20 years of practice of the pilot voice. They're great.
Yeah, you know what? You think about it, you don't want to come across like, hello, coming in hot. You don't want to hear that.
Oh, you want your pilot confident.
Yeah, we're about to land.
Exactly.
Yeah, something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly.
Yeah, I used to be able to do voices better when I was a kid. Just one of the many things that just your body, you get older. We were just talking about age and how things just, and one of them is my control of my vocal cords. So when I was a kid, though, could have just been that I practiced a lot, but now. Yeah,
I would say with your vocal cords, it's probably prioritization. With your knees, on the other hand, it's just mileage.
I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was, my back, knees were hurting, and I was like, it's like your tendons become rubber bands that were left out in the sun. You don't have that elasticity. You sit on your foot. If you ever sit down and
yes,
it's a big mistake. Why you do that, I don't know, but every time you get punished for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the cost of growing old, man. You know what I mean? So I'll pay it.
From my neck up, I'm 25. The rest of me below that point disagrees.
Yeah, totally.
So I will push it like I'm 25, but there's a whole new thing that started in my 40s called recovery, which I never really had before. So I don't like it.
Do you have like an ice bath thing?
I have a pool, which is my ice bath, starting about this time of year normally, and then you really are committed to it in January, February. But I've not taken the plunge and bought a cold plunge. But I actually do believe in it. When I'm doing it in the wintertime, it takes the place of pre-workouts. I don't have any caffeine before workouts. I just cold plunge 3 minutes, and it's very difficult. And my pool is not as cold as like some of the commercially cold plunges, get into the 40s.
I mean, it's supposed to be ice cold. It's like you see people with ice. We're not just like chilly. It's supposed to be cold.
Yeah, I have not spent the money, nor do I possess the present commitment to sit in an ice cold bath. But being in 40 degree water in your swimming pool, it will change your perspective.
That is a cold pool.
That's very
I
cold.
I was thinking you were like, yeah, my pool gets down to like 62, and I'm like, that's not really cold, Griff.
No. Wintertime, it'll, like this time of year, it'll get cooler in the evenings and whatnot, but wintertime, it'll drop into the 40s.
Yeah, everybody I know that got the ice bath, they're really into it. It almost becomes like I don't want to say religion, or cult. That would be the right word.
Yeah.
They get a little weird about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But they swear by it. And
My son who's in the Army now, he did a challenge last winter where he was trying to go 100 days straight by getting in the pool, throughout every day of the winter season. And so I got a little cultish because I ended up keeping at it longer than he did. He stepped away from it before I did, and I feel like I talked to you about it. Anyways, no, I get it, man. Part of it is like you're doing something so stupid. Like if you think about it, just zoom out from the health benefits and heat shock proteins and all of the jazz that is supposed to be health benefit for the cold plunge and then for alternating heat like a sauna, those sorts of things. Take that away. You said, so when you first wake up and you're generally speaking, you're most uncomfortable. You're still groggy. Your brain's not really firing. Your body's stiff because, again, age. And then you're going to go assault your senses by being in something freezing cold. Because, like, if you accidentally fall into something freezing cold, like, it's the risk of death, literally the risk of death. You're out, on a wintertime hunt or whatever, and you fall into freezing cold water, like, you got a good shot at dying in that context. So you're going to voluntarily, impose that upon yourself, perhaps with less risk of dying. That sounds really stupid. It doesn't sound like a sales pitch. So when those of us who are really into it or got really into it, like, we have to tell you how great it is, man. It's like Amway. Like, it'll change your life. It's amazing. You got to get in on this grind and get all your family in on it, even though it's a bad idea.
you're double diamond. Yeah, double diamond.
Yes,
that's,
exactly.
Yeah, that's how high up I am. Well, there's two components to it. There's the physical component of it, right? It's supposed to help with inflammation,
right?
Just also circulation, a couple things. But there's the mental component of it too. Just doing something that you don't want to do, and that's when people want to be disciplined. It's like, okay, probably you're going to have to do a bunch of things you don't want to do,
right?
And that's how you're going to build self-discipline. So there's like two pieces. I think it was Rick Rubin was on maybe Joe Rogan. I think, anyway, I could be totally getting the people wrong, but he was talking about he goes in and he'll spend like 20 minutes in it because he started off at like 30 seconds. And he was like, 20 minutes? He's like, oh yeah, and the water's freezing. It's like, wow, bro, and he talks about the mental part of it. He didn't even really get into that. He lost a lot of weight, got really healthy, or at least, for this episode he did. And he talked about the ice bath. But it was all of a sudden it came out of nowhere. Everybody's doing it. I had a bunch of friends doing it, especially all my friends that do like jujitsu and stuff. So that's like right up their alley. They're already punishing themselves. I remember when I was in the Marine Corps, I read an article so long ago, and it was the Northern European like Olympic team, and they would do the thing where they would get into the jacuzzi and then they'd get in the ice. They go back and forth like right after workout. And so I would do that in the, I had those big barracks. So you have those big like open showers.
Yeah.
And so I remember getting in after I'd work out and like hot shower, cold shower, hot shower, cold shower, and it felt like you're invigorated. You could tell it's doing something. I don't know if maybe that's just like the body, like you said, trying to react like, hey, we shouldn't be here. And so it's like getting alert. It might have been doing something bad. But anyway, I remember doing that. That was like 30 years ago. And it was becoming a big deal.
I've done it both ways, and there's allegedly some benefits to not doing your cold plunge right after a workout. But like after a long run, a long cardio workout, well, not that I do. I just run. I don't do other cardio things. But I'll get in the pool to cool off, and that's wonderful for inflammation. But then on the flip side of it, if it's wintertime, pool's cold, get in the morning first thing. I mean, it really does. Like, you're awake, you're invigorated, you're alive. Whatever systems in your body that don't want to experience freezing cold water, those sort of systems that are a little bit out of your control, right? They're a little bit under the surface. We're freezing, we're dying, this is bad. They come online, and man, you're awake. It's a thing.
In this, it's like related but not. Every now and then I'll do a fast. And I was just thinking today, I think I'm going to do a fast, like 48 hours with just water. And then I was thinking, maybe this is the time we do it for 5 days straight. I've never gotten past day 3.
Okay.
It becomes tough. But I have read a lot of stuff on the internet, so we know it's true.
Completely.
Yeah, 100%. That if you can go 5 days, like once a year or something like that, it reduces your chance of getting like cancer. There's a bunch of things that your body, and when I say I read on the internet, it was like WebMD type stuff. It wasn't like a guy saying this. It was like, hey, they showed statistics. They did these studies. Johns Hopkins, somebody, Carnegie, somebody, Mellon, some university did some studies and showed like, oh yeah, fasting with just water. I think they were like a cup of bone broth a day.
Okay.
I think that was it. But it's not, it forces your body to just like purge a bunch of stuff. And I would think probably with as much as we're consuming in America, Because that's a big thing right now that people are talking about. Like, why is our food source so polluted?
Right.
And you and I were kind of talking about that before we started. I just went down and got what was that? I got some kind of
orange juice thing.
And it tasted awful. It tasted like what I smell when I mow the lawn.
Oh, okay.
That's what it tasted like. I've never eaten the lawn, but maybe I just have. But, but the point of doing it isn't really like, if I wanted something good, I'd get like it would taste good. I'd get a Dr. Pepper. This is like, okay, you're going to drink all this fruits and vegetables to kind of cleanse your system. I'm kind of rambling about health, but I'm trying.
Well, the intermittent fasting thing is gained in popularity, and there's apparently some good science behind, generally speaking, trying to keep your blood sugar as low as possible and having great longevity effects. For me, I intermittent fasted for a long time. I'm running a ton right now, so I'm eating a lot more carbs than I had previously.
Are you training for something?
Yeah, I got a half marathon actually in just over a week.
Nice.
And my wife is a good runner, talented runner, and loves it. And our beginning of our relationship is based on a lie. I'm not kidding. And she's heard this story, so don't worry. This podcast won't be the thing where it becomes out there for the first time. She was coming to visit me. We lived in different towns. She was coming to visit me for the day, and she said, "Hey, I didn't get my run in this morning." This is before she left Redding. She said, "Do you like to run?" And I liked her very much, and so I lied to her and I said, "I love to run," which was not at all true at that point. I think at that point in my life, I don't know if I'd run more than 2 contiguous miles. I was really into lifting weights, so I was reasonably fit, but like not in sort of
It's a different kind of fit.
Yeah, like not in any sort of cardiovascular fitness stuff, whatever. So she gets there, and we decide to run around this park, and the park that we're running around is half mile on each side. So we get around one time, and I'm like, 2 miles. I'm like, sweet, we're done. She's like, that was great. I missed part of the story. We ran from where I lived to the park, which was a mile, and then we went around the park.
I was going to say your half mile twice but I wasn't going to interrupt.
There's 4 sides on a square, Joey, so it's half mile each side. So,
okay.
So that's how I get to 2.
Wait a second.
So it's a mile there. I'm topped out on math. Yeah, I'm topped out on math. I can't do anymore. So it was a mile there, around the park once, and then I'm thinking a mile home, 4 miles. I got this. So we finished going around the park, and she says, "Hey, that was great. Let's do it again." And of course, I can't look bad in front of this girl that I like. So I say, "Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to do that again." So we go around again, and I'm like, okay, I got just enough left in the tank to where I can get home and still be running, not have to tell the girl, not get beat by a girl, that I got to walk. So we get back to my place, and she says, "Hey, you know what? We're so close to what I wanted to run today, which is 7 miles. Do you mind if we run a little more?" The girl's going to freaking kill me. So we finished the run. She comes inside. At this point, it's time for her to head back. And so she's going to go clean up in the bathroom. And I'm laying on the floor of the townhouse that I live in under the fan. And she comes out of the bathroom. She's like, "Oh, you look so comfortable. Don't walk me out." I'm like, "Are you sure?" And she's like, Yeah. No, you're resting. You're so comfortable. Just stay there. I couldn't have walked her out if I wanted to. I was done. Legs did not work. I was so happy she lived in another town. Like I could not walk properly, get in and out of bed, up and down off the commode. Solid week. Destroyed my legs. That was 20-something
Things we
years.
do for love.
I tell you. I got the girl and a bunch of kids, and we've been married a long time, and she's wonderful. Now, I still really like her, and I run to hang out with her. Yeah.
That's good.
Still working out good. We're going with it. So I run with her. So I've run a marathon with her. I've run several half marathons with her, and we have a race together, and we're both trying to set personal records coming up here in a little over a week. But that all goes back
Where's the
to
half marathon?
a place I've never been, a little tiny town, kind of the north end of the wine country area called Cloverdale. So
I've heard of it, yeah.
We're running the Cloverdale.
Isn't there a dairy there? Isn't Cloverdale the butter?
Don't know.
Am I mixing my Cloverdales?
You might be. I'm not sure. There is I buy the half and half from Cloverdale at Costco because you get a half gallon of it for
Then
such
it
a
can't
price.
be the right Cloverdale. Yeah. Anyway, please. I digress.
All that to say, I eat a ton more for purposes of fueling the run than I was in the intermittent fasting, because we're getting back to that rabbit trail we're going down. The intermittent fasting, I was much more awake when I pushed off no breakfast and then pushed off lunch until like 1 or 2. I didn't have that afternoon bonk, which is really important because I'm sitting there at my desk working.
Are you drinking coffee?
Not in the afternoon. Morning coffee only.
And black, because the intermittent fasting, you can't have any cream or anything in it. Because
I didn't go down the commitment level of intermittent fasting to like do full keto, or actually I did combine keto and intermittent fasting for a while, but most of the time I like my coffee sweet and creamy.
Cream for sure.
Yeah. So I don't have to have that whole like, oh, I drink black coffee, I'm a man thing. I like my coffee goofy.
So you got a half marathon, but you're in a week. But aren't you getting ready to go hunting?
Run the half marathon on Sunday and start driving to Colorado on Wednesday.
Oh wow! So you're gonna go up. You're talking. You got a tag to get an elk.
I do have a cow elk tag and a mule deer tag, and we're gonna go near Buena Vista, Colorado. So
never heard of it.
seen pictures of it. It looks beautiful.
I think that's literally the name. Beautiful View. Did you say?
It is, but
Yeah.
they pronounce it. The Coloradans love them, but Spanish.
Coloradans?
I'm not sure if that's a thing. It should be. Their Spanish is not strong.
No?
Yeah, Buna.
I was thinking, but I didn't know if your Spanish wasn't strong.
I think my Spanish is strong-ish, at least stronger than whoever named Buena Vista. But yeah,
Is there no E in it? Did they phonetically?
I think there's an E in it.
Okay, but they still say Buna.
Yep. So, and apparently people from that area call it Buny.
I have some clients in Prescott, Arizona, and they call it Prescott.
Oh.
And so when I talk to him, Prescott, Arizona, but it's just like Chico, they have almonds, right?
Right.
So it's, the rest of the world says almonds, but I like when they always say, well, how do you say salmon? It's like, oh, that's right. It's just add the S minus the D. So you're going to go hunting. How long do you think you'll be out there?
Well, the season is about 10 days. It opens on Saturday, and then it goes to the following Sunday. So, 9 days? Season's 9 days. It's second rifle season, so it's long. Hopefully, we're not out there all 9 days. Your chances for success in a public land hunt go down the longer you're out there. More hunters in the woods making noise, spooking animals, that sort of thing. But we're prepared to go the whole time. We're hoping sooner versus later.
So if you get your tags immediately, you're hopping in the car and coming home?
Yep.
You're not just going to go out there and live off the land for a few extra days?
No, at that point, because that volume of meat is meaningful. It's the most organic, healthiest thing you've ever put in your body. It never had any hormones or injections or did anything other than literally live off the land. So it's important to get it processed quickly, and get it in the freezer and make it last. My tag's a cow elk tag. Cow elk produce a couple of 100 pounds of meat.
Hanging, right?
Yeah. The actual product, you probably produce 175, 200 pounds of meat. And then
that'll last a while.
Mule.
Oh, you got a lot of kids, maybe not.
I only got 2 left at home. I have 27. She's in Nashville. She might be the hardest working one in the family right now. She's working on her FNP and working as not an FNP. She's a psychiatric nurse practitioner. She's working on her nurse practitioner's degree. She is working as a nurse, and she's a mom of a 1-year-old. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, so she's just outside of Nashville. Then there's Tate. He's 24. He's a local guy. Just bought his first house recently. And then
congratulations, Tate.
He's doing a good job, man. He's so not like me. Like, I'm so intense. My emotions run 1 to 10, 1 to 10, 1 to 10. And he's just the chillest, coolest guy to hang out with. I want to be like Tate when I grow up.
Good luck.
I know. Like, I've started to grow this beard, and it's got a lot of gray in it, and it grows out wiry and angry. He's also got a glorious beard. So Tate's winning.
Man.
Yeah, he's winning. Then middle son, he's the one who's in the Army, and he's an ROTC cadet at Grand Canyon.
That's
awesome.
awesome.
So we only have 2 left at home. We have our teen daughter and our little son, who's 7, the Lego and Star Wars guy. Yeah, it'll be a bunch of meat in the freezer, but not as many people at the table as frequently as formerly.
Do you get like all the standard cuts? Like you're like, hey, I've got some New Yorks and roasts and stuff like that, or is it like, it's a little bit different cuts?
Well,
do you get fillets? I think you do, right?
The better answer is I don't know, because I've only ever processed my own meat. This time will be the first time if I'm successful on both animals, because it's so much work to process the meat in your own. I mean, that's another thing. Everybody should hunt and kill their own thing and process it at least once, so you know what you're doing. When you go to the grocery store and you buy that thing that's like looks perfect, it's a steak. Like, that's really, really hard to get that there. You should learn that. But I digress. I'll keep the backstraps, tenderloins, cut those into steaks. I might make a roast out of some of the shanks, and then I'll grind everything else. But this time I will take it to a professional processor, because it's so much work, and then you're keeping it on ice the whole way home from Colorado. This time I'll just have them hang it, and then I'll have them ship it to me, or if we're out there for a few days, freeze dry it and bring it home. And that's how I'll get it. So I don't know. Ask me again in a few months.
I will. Okay. I will ask you again. We started buying a cow, half a cow a few years ago, and local, grass-fed, grass-finished, no antibiotic, the whole 9 yards, even grass-fed, grass-finished, which is pretty lean. And it's amazing, the taste versus what you buy in the store. I mean, you have to have a freezer. We get about high 200s, low 300s each year. But I then bought a half a cow each year, and we went from eating hardly any meat at all to being like pretty heavy carnivores, where we're eating beef multiple times a week. What's funny is, as we've seen inflation go up, I've paid the exact same for this meat for all 3 years. It's actually, I think, 4 years, because the first year it took us 2 years to eat the cow,
okay,
a half cow. they're still charging, going to the farmer, he's still charging the exact same amount he charged me in 2021. So you think about what we've seen inflation-wise in the marketplace, but, and I thought, man, his costs haven't changed. He's got a bunch of cows on a farm that he owns, he probably raises his own hay or something like that. And so to him, there's no reason to, I guess, and we paid like $7 a pound processed. This is from the butcher. Right. So $7 a pound for fillets, $7 a pound for hamburger, all in between. At the time that the first cow that I did that was a good price. It was a good price. It was when you went into like R&R. I don't live very far from R&R. I love to go in there when we need some other stuff, And $7 was like a little bit high for him, a little bit on the high end back then for hamburger, but definitely cheap for any of the steaks or anything like that. Well, now it's super cheap. Now that's like, and I just got another one a few months ago, and it was $7 processed.
And you're getting a product that the person who raised it, you know where it was raised. And if he's not, if your farmer that's producing this, if he's not having to buy supplemental, grass to feed the animal, like he's got enough on his property to do it, and he's not paying to transport it, right? Because everything that we put on board a fuel-powered vehicle costs more money to get to R&R and everywhere else. If you're not experiencing those costs, he can keep his costs. I suspect he's doing you a little bit of a favor, but he can keep his costs very, very low because you're going direct to the producer.
Yeah, and I wasn't negotiating. I wasn't like, hey, I was just like, hey, how much? And he's like, $7 a pound, same as last time. I'm like, yeah. Okay. You have to buy you have to spend a couple grand, but you think about, I hear how food is expensive. And I think processed food is both expensive and inexpensive. It's kind of a weird thing. My friends will, because we don't really eat processed food, a little bit, right? But not like the average American. And they'll go and they'll spend $30 on a meal. That's not a high-end meal at all. And they're saying, oh, well, that's really expensive, that cow. I said, do you realize, look how much money you're spending a week eating out? You could buy that cow. You could buy these ingredients. Now you have to chop onions and garlic and what have you. But I don't think it's expensive. I think it's one big fat cost, and the big cost is your time. Because you have to, but my wife loves to cook, and my kids have gotten into it too. And I'm not gonna say I cook, but I love to barbecue. My parents used to own a barbecue restaurant here in town,
really?
long time ago. DJ's Barbecue.
I remember. Okay, so I grew up off of Hilltop Drive, and DJ's Barbecue Pit was our go-to breakfast spot. We would walk over there on Sunday mornings. We'd walk over there, and we'd get DJ's Barbecue Pit. I went to DJ's Barbecue Pit so long ago that our waitress, who was our regular Sunday morning waitress, asked us smoking or not. And we would always pick non-smoking because my mom was an asthmatic. And then, of course, once you say non-smoking, the smoke knows to stop. Don't go any further.
They're smoking over there. That's almost 5 feet away.
Yeah, it totally doesn't.
Different. It was a different time, man.
Yeah, it was totally a different time. But that place was great. We loved that place. And now it's I don't know what it was a video store up there for a little bit. That went by the wayside. They sold it off
in the late 90s. Okay. They tore down the restaurant itself and built up. You're right. It was a Showtime Video. It came into town, had like 3 videos, and it's changed hands. It's some kind of corporate nondescript something sitting above Bartell's.
Yeah.
But yeah, we had I grew up barbecuing, and we had the real barbecue. It was a giant brick pit. Big metal doors, and you'd put the mesquite and hickory and get that going, and the vent on the other side, and we'd cook 300-400 pounds of meat, and we'd cook all day. The ribs would take a few hours, the brisket would take a few hours, and so you were rotating. You'd go in and cook for like 8 hours, 9 hours meat, and then good. So now I have a green egg and a Weber.
Yep.
No gas. I'd use I used to buy, it's like a brand that's called like Lazara's or something like that, but it's charcoal wood.
Okay, yeah, with lump charcoal, not the briquette.
Yeah, I don't know fuel, and I got I had a chimney starter. I had a chimney starter, but that's a pain in the. I have one of those.
The electric things.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you just put it down there. You put plug it in. You come back out, and it's flaming. It's so fast and easy.
Good stuff.
But we barbecue, especially with the cow. Got to cook it, right?
We've done the same thing you've done. Part of it is like. Well, you see all these subscription services, right? So if somebody told you that, it was going to cost you whatever, $150 a year or $150 for Spotify, but you got it for a whole year, people might be more resistant. I'm not picking on Spotify; it's just an example. I have their product, I like it, but you might be more resistant at that high price of $150. Whereas somebody's like, oh, it's $12 a month. You're like, no problem. So spending $30 or $40 to eat out seems like less of an insult to the budget, even though over the course of time it adds up a lot more than the $1,500 or $2,000 you spend on the cow. And there's a backside cost, too, that people aren't recognizing, which is that $30 fast food meal, and you can spend $30 on fast food.
Easily.
Which is I mean, I hate to sound like that old curmudgeon, right? Like, when I was a kid. But not the other day, but a few months ago, my son called. He was at the office using our high-speed internet there. He had a Zoom interview. We live a little bit rurally, so high-speed and internet don't go together in rural communities.
Starlink.
Yeah, we have Starlink now. Love it. We were able to stream both the football game last night on Amazon Prime and something on Netflix at the same time. It was modernity. It was amazing.
Nice.
Anyways, he called me because I was at an appointment, and he said, "Hey, can you bring me some lunch?" And I thought he was going to hit me up for something good, from the hearth, a good burger, something like that. And he says, "I'm really feeling Carl's Jr." So we got 2 sodas.
Gold digger?
Yeah. Crisp cut fries and a cheeseburger, and it was like $24. And I mean, I was just blown away by that. So the backside cost of eating like that, though, comes from feeling like crud later that day, and then all the cascade of problems that comes from eating like that regularly later in your life. It's not. That juice isn't worth the squeeze. I watched my father do that to himself, and then he lived with us and took care of us we took care of him rather the last several years of his life. And what he wanted to do, he was prevented from doing by the way he had lived the previous 15, 20 years, just not taking care of his body and not eating right and letting himself get too heavy. And so that really, prohibited him from having freedom. So, you make this little bit of a disciplined decision now to save your money, buy a cow, eat at home, cook. It's better food.
Jump in a cold pool in the morning.
Jump in a cold pool. See, we're going to get you drinking the Kool-Aid before we're done here today.
Oh, I think so.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time. And then when you're 70, you're still up walking around. You're still shooting. You're still target. Like he was really into shooting. You're still target shooting. You're still building. He loved to build. Instead, he was mostly confined to a walker and a wheelchair.
Sorry to hear that.
He's a great guy. I mean, I no complaints about my childhood. I'm not one of those people who looks back and, I didn't have this, or I didn't have that. I had great parents. It's one of the, if my kids ask me like, what's the secret or whatever, it's like marry the right person, have great parents, and love the Lord your God. Those, if you have those 3 things, you're gonna be all right.
I totally agree. I haven't always had those things in my life. I haven't always, I think I'm in like a Renaissance period right now where we've been really going to church and Bible study, and I'm seeing it's kind of like I lost my way for a little while. You know what I mean? I think I was taking in too much negative energy, and what I mean is just you're listening to the world. And so you're forgetting that these things matter. You know what I mean? God exists, and it matters, and your relationship with God matters, and you just get caught up in the world. And if you look at the world right now, it's like every stream there's a lot of negative stuff. It's war here, war there. This is bad. This is bad. Like it's a pretty steady stream of negative energy,
right,
like nonstop. And I remember when I was a kid, we made comments about the news being negative. If it bleeds, it leads,
Right.
But I don't think there was this much. Now it's like drinking from a fire hose,
right,
versus back then it was like trickling water, and it was a different kind. It was, the Walter Cronkite or just the Dan Rather, where they're like, oh, there's war in here, but it didn't seem the same. Now it's very petty. It's very emotional. Our communication has really gone downhill. And if you listen to anybody who there's a ton of people trying to tell you why. The ones that have resonated with me are where it's a combination of things. You know what I mean? There's not this one thing, but the internet, social media definitely had a transformative effect on us. And a lot of it is negative, especially with our youth. And we're talking here, we're going to show up on YouTube. So I know it's like, hey, you're part of the problem. Not really, because it also has a positive, and the negative is more of, I think, the constant hate and bickering. Something happened where people are getting dopamine hits from being very hurtful to other people. And, it's hurting people, hurt people, but you just see, you look at like anytime a star missteps, anybody famous missteps, not just star, anything. The knives come out, and I don't know was that always there and no one got a voice, so it never built momentum, right? Because you didn't have any feedback loop where you're like, if you watched the news and you found out somebody did something wrong, there wasn't this ability to just like a feeding frenzy to start. And now there is this ability, as soon as there's something, there's just a feeding frenzy. I don't know.
I don't know that human nature has changed, but our ability to access the worst of ourselves has become just ubiquitous. It's everywhere. So like when our oldest kids, who described for you earlier, now 27 and 24, when they were going through
love how you're a lawyer and you're always a lawyer.
Yeah.
Do you notice, like, even when you communicate, you're like, I already presented that Exhibit A.
Yeah.
Brought that in, Your Honor.
I don't mean to to do. Well, okay, so
you go with it. I love it. I think it's great.
We were talking. I'm not sure if we were recording yet or not, but you were talking about your friend whose son went on to get an engineering degree and then go fly for the Navy. That was my goal. I wanted to go down that road, and so I was an aeronautical engineering major until I figured out that math is really, really challenging. And
I don't know. You did the 4 squares, and I didn't get it.
but I thought that was it. That was full throttle right there, done. So I changed my major and eventually I landed in going to law school, but I had always been told growing up, like, oh, you should be a lawyer, you should be a lawyer. And I just, it was always just something that somebody said. And I like to argue and I like to debate and, generally kind of my disposition is being a pain in the butt. So eventually I caught up with the reality of who I was and I just went with it, right? I was like, well, I'm kind of a pain in the butt, just trend that direction. So now I'm a professional pain, hopefully not to my clients. I'm doing excellent work for them, but to our opponents, be a pain to them.
A professional antagonist?
Yeah. My wife tells me I don't turn it off. And she'll even say to me, you're lawyering me. And my response to that, if I was being completely transparent, was no, I'm griffing you, because it's just like, it just is what I am. I just happen to do it for a job also. So I used to tell them when they were in their teen years, and they would talk about how difficult it is being a teen and how I didn't just understand. Obviously I was younger, so my own teen years were closer, and I would dismiss them. Like, no, you guys are wrong. It's not that hard. Like, I did it. I remember it. It seems hard, but it's not. I would go back and I would counsel me to not say that to them, because it is different. When you wear something that somebody makes fun of at school in 1995, you go home at 3 o'clock and you're not followed by the fact that you were poked fun at. In the worst case scenario, typically it's when you get picked up by mom or you get off the bus or you get home to your house, like you have this sanctuary. They all have devices in their pocket, or if they don't, like we're kind of the weird family that our kids don't get cell phones.
Our kids don't have social media. They have my 19, almost 20, and my 18-year-old. They have iPhones. They have no social media accounts. Never have been. And they're off in college, and they're like, there's no reason to have it. It's just, you know what I mean? They didn't grow up on it. Yeah.
I applaud that they're doing that as adults on their own. So our kid who's off at college, he didn't get a cell phone until he's 16, and our daughter has a cell phone now, but it's like calling, texting, right? She has no social media, no internet access. She thinks I'm like Amish and the most archaic father and the worst.
In a way, you are.
But I don't care. I would.
Fair enough.
I would rather be. If I'm wrong about it, there's no real cost to her. Where I was wrong, though, for my kids that are older now, is it did follow them home. Cruelty followed them home. What they missed out on followed them home. And I'm going to pass this off like I've done the hard work of the science behind it, but I haven't. But I've done enough reading in this area, enough paying attention to folks who have some level of training, skill, expertise in this area, that it turns out what keeps humans most engaged isn't like, whatever, puppies running through fields. So it's not stuff that you might really like or find very joyful or find very relaxing. And it's not stuff that makes you really, really angry, just stuff that makes you in a rage angry or something that's really disgusting. It's stuff that makes you mad, but like a little bit. It's mad, but it's not an imminent threat to you. So social media companies, these are monetized organizations. Like, their goal is not altruistic. It's to make money for their shareholders, which I have no problem with that. I'm fine as a capitalist, make money for your shareholders. That's your job.
They're the same as the tobacco companies 70 years ago.
Yeah, right. You've got
they know that it's negative. They know it's having a negative impact, but they're like, hey, look, freedom, and we make money. And so they just, but that's the downside of, I'm a capitalist. I have to say that before my next statement. That is the downside of capitalism.
Sure.
That's why you're supposed to have the systems and checks and balances, and we don't have them anymore. They're gone.
Right. There's no warning on Instagram or on Snapchat that says, Surgeon General tells you this could get cancer, or whatever. Surgeon General reports that people who regularly use social media, don't sleep as well and have higher rates of self-reported anxiety. I suspect, I'm guessing, but I suspect I'm right on those things. But in any event, there's no warning label. So these monetized companies have figured out that the best way to keep people's eyeballs on their product and on their advertising, which is how they make money, is to kind of tick people off a little bit. And so that's why we're so, like, the news is always bad. Because if the news, like, we're doing something pretty amazing here. Like, we're talking to each other freely, openly. We're saying things that people might not agree with. We have no real threat. The news is going to boot down the door and arrest us for it. It's air conditioned. We have electricity. We're drinking clean water. Like, life is pretty stinking good.
It is.
There's a lot of places in the world today that drinking clean water is like a miracle for the day, right? But yet, if you ask folks, like, everything's going to hell in a handbasket, man. It's bad, bad, bad.
Oh, bad. So bad. bad out there.
Yeah, and I mean, on one hand, I agree with that. On the other hand, I'm like, zoom out just a minute. It's not that bad. Middle class in the 1950s in the United States, everybody had one car and air conditioning, and a phone was optional. If I told you that I lived with no air conditioning, I had no telephone access, and we had one car for the family, you'd be like, oh, Griff's on hard times. Very poor guy, right? So our standard has changed.
Completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they've shifted. And I don't want to be negative. I don't want to just throw, coal on the fire, but I also want to be conscious of it.
How very 1990s of you to put coal on the fire. I mean,
what would you say now? I don't want to add another solar panel to the EV.
Yeah, I don't know what you would say, what the modern equivalent would be.
But I do want to be aware of it, and I try to disconnect from it. I unfortunately got a Twitter account, and that's the one that I'm partially addicted to. I don't spend any, I have these other accounts because like I had to have them for business. You have to post to some of these, but I'm never on them. YouTube, if you consider YouTube social media, and I think it blurs the line, it's in that realm, but definitely, and YouTube, that's the big one for me. And it's brought my attention span down, and it just keeps condensing. Now that the shorts are,
yep.
They said when we were kids, I think the attention span was like something like 20, 22 minutes. That's why sitcoms are that's about as long as we can get you to.
Right.
And now it's something like 9 seconds. That's why if you'll watch, especially towards children, the camera angles are changing like rapid fire. You know what I mean? So just watch a show. It looks like it's ADHD inducing.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's not good. So we try to control that. Just not letting them have social media accounts, I think, is a big one.
That's huge.
And I cringe when I see little kids on devices in certain places, and you can tell they're just like, man, this is like a crack pipe and slot machine combined. Do you know what I mean?
And it's for both the kid and the parents. It breaks my heart. I mean, it really does pain me when I'm at a restaurant with my family, for example, and I see a restaurant at a neighboring table and the kid's all plugged into a tablet or a phone. And on one hand, the parents are looking for a quiet minute to chat, and so they're pacifying that child. On the other hand, they're not working out life together. They're not talking about what was good in the day, what was difficult in the day. My wife, I mentioned earlier, she was out at, they're lawyering again, referencing back to former evidence. She was out of
Your
town.
Honor.
Yeah, right. She was out of town.
If you want to
yesterday.
call me Your Honor, totally feel free.
You are wearing black today,
Yeah.
so it's basically a robe.
I feel like a magistrate.
Yeah. Ooh, magistrate. I like that.
I like that word. I like throwing words, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I read books.
I know you do. Some without pictures, too, I'm told. So she was out of town picking up her folks at the San Francisco airport yesterday, and my daughter and I got to have a date. My teen daughter and I got to have a date, and we had no phones at the table, which is our rule at home or out. And so we were sitting at the restaurant last night, and we were talking about relationships and boys and girls and some of the difficulties of that. And we both, 49er fan, grew up in the 80s, right? Joe Montana, Jerry Rice, Roger Craig, Dwight Clark. Just amazing teams, and the 49er game was right there. I could have been watching it on Amazon Prime. My daughter could have been texting a friend or something, but the phones went away, and magic happened between the two of us. Like, it's not the easiest thing in the world to raise a teen. I'm sure you know this, and other parents out there that might listen to this would know that. But it was this little island sanctuary where we had, 20 minutes of each other's undivided attention, and she was in a spot where she could hear me. I was in a spot where I could hear her. There was no pressure to be anywhere, and we talked. All those parents that are plugging their kids in, they're missing out on that. And don't get me wrong, I get it. I want to have a quiet conversation with my wife sometime, but I didn't come to a restaurant in public with a lot of other people expecting a quiet conversation with my bride. Have your kids there. Deal with it, discipline them, because one day they're going to go out, right? They're going to need to have that discipline.
Yeah.
And I don't want to sit next to your undisciplined child when they're an undisciplined adult. So there's my 2 cents on it.
I always find those people. They always find a seat next to me. I know it seems like there's more and more of them. I think the bigger thing, to me, when we're talking, we can start to go down this road of this isn't good, this isn't good, this isn't good, and I always want to bring it back to like a foundation. Say what's one thing we could change that would have a ripple effect versus like addressing, each problem. And I think if we could teach people at a very young age to pursue continuous improvement, even it can be small, but just getting in that rhythm of saying, hey, look, how are you going to be better tomorrow than you were today? It could be something really, really small, but planting that seed versus you just meet a lot of people that seem to have, for lack of a better way to put it, they seem like they've given up.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like they walk around like defeated. They're defeated. And we're all defeated, man. I lose all the time. But trying to instill that where but you can come back. what are we going to do? What are we going to change? Do we need to cut something out of our diet? Do we need to get up and walk? Do we need to go a little further? Do we need to drink a little bit more water? Should I be taking magnesium? These are little things. And there's a couple of books like Atomic Habits is a great book. The Compound Effect. These are like, Compound Effect's like that big. It's a tiny little book. He just talks about how success is a bunch of little tiny things. Stop looking for the big thing, little things. I think if we could start there, because I don't think addressing these problems, I think it's like Hydra. Everyone you have to get down to the base,
right? And
everything up at the top it's just a waste of time. It's just makes for great arguing and debating and
sure. I mean, people. Well, I mean, you said this earlier when you said that you listen to these folks when you're consuming sort of like a long form podcast. The folks that you find yourself being attracted to their rationale is because it's not simple, right? These are complex problems. They require complex solutions. But if we start attacking just the symptoms that are out there on the edges, then more symptoms pop up. You have to get to the root problem. And so, you're talking about this idea of building in a little bit of discipline and a little bit of self-evaluation from the earliest stage, and a lot of that can be done, I think, I don't have the secret sauce for this, right? Don't get me wrong. But if you can get your kids, in terms of parenting, if you can get your kids to ask, or if you can ask them and you have enough credibility with them that they'll listen to the question and then work out an answer with you or on their own as they get older. But it's like, how could you have handled that differently? What can you learn from that? And then what might you do differently next time to see a different outcome? That's huge. And getting people to do that. I learned from cases that I'm in now. Like I was talking to a lawyer. In fact, I was sitting in my truck when I saw you outside, and I was chatting to a lawyer who used to work for me. He's down in LA now. And we were talking about another lawyer that's here in Redding. And he is not the most pleasant person to be on the opposite side of the table with, but he's a very good lawyer, very talented. You will earn your keep when you're opposing this guy. You can learn from that, right? You can learn from that hard work that it takes to oppose this particular attorney that we were chatting about. And you can take that same lesson anywhere in your life. Like the harder you're working at something, it's not supposed to be easy. You learn way more in the difficulty. You learn way more in the failures than you learn in the successes. And so if you take the opportunity, even somebody's like, I've been practicing law 20 years. Like every time I'm in a really, really hard case or I have a very talented lawyer on the other side, like that's an opportunity to learn, put something in my toolkit, take it with me next time. I'll be better at my job.
So you are a trial lawyer. You find yourself in court a lot? Because, when you think about lawyers, that's what we all think. We see TV. But the vast majority of lawyers aren't in courtrooms. They're doing everything outside the courtroom, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It'd be fair to say that I'm a trial lawyer, but it would also be fair to say that 95% of my life is spent outside of the courtroom. So, in my practice area as a personal injury lawyer, we prepare every case like it's going to go to trial, but the whole judicial system, for good reason, has been designed to avoid trial if at all possible. If everything went to trial, you'd have a backlog of 10 years to get a courtroom and a judge and a jury to hear it. So not everything can go to trial, and not everything should. In the personal injury realm, cases that go to trial are ones that have very extreme damages. There's a great deal of money at stake, and we just can't agree, and we need a jury to tell us. Or there's significant damages, and we're not sure about fault, and we need a jury to help us get to fault. I'm very convinced it's their fault, and they're very convinced it's my client's fault or some third party's fault. We need a jury. Most of the time, that doesn't happen because you don't have one or the other or both of those factors. The vast majority of personal injury cases resolve something well better than 95%. So as a result, we don't find ourselves in court a lot, but we take a lot of batting practice, even though we don't get up to the plate as often as we might like as trial attorneys. We do a lot of BP litigation.
What's BP?
Batting practice. Sorry.
Oh, batting practice. Okay.
Yeah, baseball was my thing as a kid, so we take a lot of batting practice. And you need to develop your case as though you're about ready to step in there, bottom of the ninth, your team needs a home run, and you're prepared to hit it. You have to prepare every case like that. So that's what we do. So we're really, really good at getting ready to go to trial, but often trial doesn't actually happen. So that's the modern personal injury trial attorney.
How did you get into personal injury law?
I got in a car accident, actually. So when I came out of law school, that girl that made me do all that running, she was still up here in Redding. And so...
Are you from here?
I'm from here, but I left to go to college and go to law school. And I wasn't going to come back to Redding. I had taken a job elsewhere. But then I met her, and so plans changed. I came back here, and I went to work for what's called an insurance defense firm. So, you have auto insurance, and let's say you make a driving mistake, and somebody sues you and alleges that you caused them injuries. You turn that claim into your insurance company, and then they'll either provide you house counsel, which is somebody who works for your insurance company to be your lawyer, or they'll hire an outside law firm to defend you. I worked at one of those kind of law firms. It was primarily insurance defense. And we did insurance defense for all sorts of different things, schools, public entities, lots of car accident cases, all that kind of work. But on May 1st, 2009, which was actually the day I founded my law firm now, Arthofer and Tonkin, with my business partner, Ken Arthofer. I make this joke to him every year on our anniversary. On the day we started business, he went to work and I went and played golf. So I was playing golf at a...
Perfect partnership.
Yeah, it's worked out great for me for 15 years. He's been a steady worker and I play golf. Kidding aside, I play golf like twice a year badly in charity tournaments, and this was one of those. So I was coming back from Tierra Oaks after having played in a charity tournament. Young lady pulled out in front of me, caused an accident, and I got mistreated by my own insurance company through the claim process. And I, thought to myself, why am I using my skills and talents to try and save an insurance company some money on these claims when I could be representing people and making sure that insurance companies don't do to them what they just try to do to me? And so I slowly started transitioning to representing folks. And then something really remarkable, probably the most remarkable thing that's happened in my career outside of the actual results, but just sort of my view toward being an attorney, is I started recognizing that I had an opportunity to help people. Some of the folks that come into my office are dreadfully injured. Their life has changed. Their ability to provide for their kids, their families, those are different things for them post-accident than they were before. And it could be a long slog in some of these cases. Very difficult to resolve, very long cases. But when you help provide resources for a family such that they're not going out and buying yachts or living a fast life, but they're always going to have a roof over their head. They're always going to be able to buy groceries. That is super meaningful. So being able to participate in a job that actually has meaning in other people's lives at a real, tangible way, that changed my job satisfaction. And so then once that started to happen, then it just became a matter of getting to the point where we could handle 100% personal injury work, which is all we've done for several years now, is just 100% personal injury.
So, like, when you say personal injury, that's pretty wide. There's a lot going on. Is there, like, specialty that you do, just this personal injury, that, versus everything?
Any way you can get hurt that is the fault of someone else is personal injury, and we do that.
Oh, okay. You do it all. Okay.
Yeah. Now, there are some... To the layperson, there might be some things in there that you would think would be included in personal injury that aren't and that we don't do. So, for example, workers' compensation has its own special legal system. So if you're hurt on the job, it doesn't matter whose fault it is. Fault's not an analysis in workers' comp. There are lawyers who specialize, some great ones in town that we'll partner with and work with on cases that cross over, that have both a personal injury and a work comp component. But if it's strictly work comp, that's not what we do. And then medical malpractice, you're thinking, well, geez, and it doesn't get much more personal injury than if you're injured in the context of working with a physician or having a medical procedure. We don't do that. Again, special area of law, but we work closely with a couple of firms in San Francisco and Sacramento when we have our clients that are hurt in med mal contexts and make sure we put them in the appropriate hands. But other than those two areas, I don't care if you get hurt in a plane, train, boat, car, bike, walking, trip, slip, fall, auto accident, whatever. We'll handle your case. We've handled them in all of those contexts, from boating to pedestrians to autos, helicopters. It doesn't matter. We've taken on all those cases.
How many cases a year do you? Because you have a whole team. I've been to your office. You've got several people. It's not just you.
Yeah.
You mentioned your partner, but there's other people in there.
I can probably run a rough number. We started our filing number at 3,000 when we opened for business on May 1st, 2009. We just arbitrarily picked 3,000. I think the old firm that we had been a part of was in the 2,000. So we said, okay, our first file will be number 3,000. And I think we're somewhere around opening file 4,300. So
1,300 over 14 years?
Yeah, over
about 90.
Coming up on 15 years. No, we've been 15 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I would say that our caseload has been very high and has remained high for several years. So I'd say, yeah, we're probably resolving 80, 90 cases a year across the office. Some years it's more because cases are maybe a little on the smaller side, so you resolve them quicker. Sometimes it's less, but yeah, something like 80, 90 cases a year.
How many of those do you find yourself actually in court in front of a judge on average?
You probably find yourself in court in front of a judge much more frequently than you do in trial per se, because there's motions, there's case management conferences.
Let's try it that way. Let me restate it. How many of those do you usually go to trial?
1%, 2%.
Okay.
I mean, it's really low. And there's, again, the whole court system has been, well, two things have happened. court backlog. So the court system's been designed to promote settlement. All courts in the state of California have a mandatory settlement conference that you have to participate in. So the court takes a crack at trying to resolve cases. Cases are exceptionally expensive to try. By the time you hire experts, hire treating physicians to come testify, if you try a case and your costs for trial are $40,000, $50,000, that's on the low side. You can spend several $100,000 putting a case on. And as a personal injury lawyer, you advance those costs. So, and I mean, that's something we've done. We've had cases where we've advanced tens of thousands on tens of thousands of dollars to, prosecute the case properly and hire appropriate experts to analyze the issues for which you need that kind of thing. But the system's been designed to avoid it. And then something else happened. We had COVID. And so, a lot of the processes that used to be in person went online, courts went online, and then the courts really, because the court system shut down, if you wanted to try and resolve a case, you found yourself in a lot of mediation, which is a private process where you hire a neutral third, usually a retired but very experienced attorney or a retired judge or both, and they help the parties see their way to a resolution. Mediation picked up in the frequency of its use post-COVID and has stayed very, very high. Like very good mediators have, they're booked out months on their calendar. So those things have combined to reduce the frequency of trial.
Now, is the difference like mediation means that neither party it has to take it versus arbitration they do or something like? Isn't it like that's the difference or something?
Yep, mediation's a voluntary process. Both parties usually, or all parties, whether it's 2 or 3 or 4 or 10, doesn't matter, share the cost of the mediation equally, typically, and then you're not bound with the mediator's recommendation. So if the mediator thinks you're blowing it and really thinks that you ought to be taking less or demanding more or whatever, that's not binding. And it's also private. What the mediator is sharing with you and your client about strengths and weaknesses of your case and what he thinks the other side might be able to come up with in terms of resources to settle the case isn't what he's sharing in the other room. It's very private, and mediation doesn't resolve. You don't really know where the other side was typically. You know what their bottom line was. Although sometimes you do, and then that's that moment where you have to have that heart-to-heart with your client and decide what's best and right for them. Arbitration can be both binding and non-binding, but typically it's binding, and it's basically a private trial, so there's a judge, you present evidence. The formality can sometimes change. Sometimes arbitration can be much less formal in terms of the admission of evidence, but the arbitrator will issue a written opinion, and then that becomes, typically speaking, the end result in that case, and that is binding.
Not very good segues, but I had a couple of questions that were going through my head that I thought you might be able to answer. The Sword of Damocles.
The Sword of Damocles.
Does that sound familiar to you?
It does not, so tell me a little more.
I don't know. Is that the one where the sword was above the king's head? Who's that?
You're not trying to Solomon baby splitting.
No, that's different.
Okay.
That's where, this one was
The
one
real
of the
mother.
kings had the sword over his head. Somebody wanted to be king. They put the sword over his head. Is that the Sword of Damocles?
You're outside.
I don't know, man.
I have a really
The
large.
streams merge with me a lot.
You can't cross the streams, man. Didn't you watch Ghostbusters?
Yeah, more than once.
Yeah. So there's an inordinate amount of useless trivia inside my head, but you have gone down a road that I am unfamiliar with, and I don't like it. I feel uncomfortable.
I just thought being a lawyer, the lawyer would be like, oh yeah, the Sword of Damocles we talk about all the time.
I could say it with my pilot voice, and yes. What is your question about the Sword of Damocles, Mr. Garden?
I have no idea where I was bringing that with. For some reason when you were talking, I was thinking Sword of Damocles. I have no idea why.
Okay.
And then the second thing I was going to, what is your favorite lawyer movie?
Favorite lawyer movie? Okay, so I
know your favorite scene.
They're not like
that.
They're not like that. I mean, lawyering is not like the movies.
What?
It's all the stuff that happens over 2 years compressed into an hour and a half, and a lot of stuff that you're not allowed to do because it's illegal. Makes it into the movies. But my favorite lawyer movie, the best lawyer movie for accuracy is a movie called A Civil Action with John Travolta.
Yes.
I had to watch that in law school.
That's based on a true story
True
of them
story.
putting the poison in the water.
Yep.
Right?
The
name of the company starts with a B, and it was one of these companies that owned all these.
It owned tanneries.
Yeah,
and it was in Massachusetts.
But it owns a bunch of stuff, like the parent company.
I don't know.
They did the Beatrice or something like that.
Okay.
Anyway.
So there's an incredible scene in that movie which illustrates a point that you're taught in trial advocacy in law school, and that any young lawyers
Never ask a question that you don't know the answer to?
Yes, that is
Nailed it.
Nailed it. Great
That just
job.
happened.
You cannot. Yeah, right. I know. Sword of Damocles. Anyway, I'll be Googling him immediately upon leaving here. So yeah, he asks a question that he doesn't know the answer to, and he gets burned badly in front of the jury. So if you really want to know what the difficulty of, and that's a personal injury case, and that's a toxic tort, and literally everybody in the firm is putting their houses up for mortgage to pay these costs, and they're taking on Goliath. I mean, it really is a David and Goliath type case. That's a great movie to see what it's really like. Kind of a boring movie, probably.
Yeah, it was a little slow.
not
Powerhouse cast.
powerhouse cast, true story, amazing. Yeah, I mean, you even get into these federal motions, a 12B6 motion, which is similar to what we call a demurrer here in California. That's in the movie. I mean, it's really accurate. But my favorite lawyer movie.
Come on, favorite scene. I think I know it. I wish I could write it on a piece of paper. This would be like where the magician, if you watch, or the mentalist,
Yes,
I'd be like,
right.
oh, I'll write it down. And what did he say?
Yeah.
You know,
If you get this, I'll trust
A Few
you to
Good
be-
Men?
It's not A Few Good Men.
Oh,
it's not. You missed it.
That is,
it's a
come
little
on,
more
man.
obscure.
Bad.
It's-
That's so inaccurate, by the way. A Few
Yes.
Good Men. That entire thing is so inaccurate. But
Tom Cruise, Jack Nicholson, shouting, courtroom. I mean,
oh, it's great.
it's
Jack
win-win.
Nicholson, just yeah.
Yeah. No, my favorite scene or my favorite lawyer movie, I can't think of the name of it. It's Richard Gere is the attorney.
Yeah.
And Edward Norton.
Hold on. Keep going.
Edward Norton is the accused in that movie. It is definitely an R-rated film. It is definitely
Primal
not
Fear.
for kids. I don't think that's right.
That's
is
right.
It Primal Fear?
Primal Fear.
Okay.
Right? Am I right? I'm getting a head nod off camera.
It's Primal Fear. Okay, so yeah, Primal Fear. And the great scene in that movie, I don't want to ruin it for anybody who might watch it, is at the very end.
When they realized it was a dream? No.
Yeah, right. When Edward Norton is talking to his attorney, who has just done a remarkable job for him in the courtroom, and it's just a brutal twist. But I like that because
Tell
it's a
her
movie.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Tell her I'm sorry about that.
And
that
he
thing.
uses a different voice.
Yeah. And he goes, wait, there's no.
Yeah.
I can't remember the two names, but he's like, there was never the other one. That's Ed
Great.
Norton's first movie. That's his break.
Really?
Yeah, that's his
Okay.
first. I mean, he crushed it.
Great movie. Not
All
because
downhill
of the
from there.
lawyer stuff.
No.
But yeah, no, Fight Club, he was crazy. in Fight
that's
Club.
right.
He does
was good.
crazy really well.
Yeah, he does.
I've heard it said that actors aren't necessarily acting; they're just being themselves. Like, because if you look at certain characters or certain actors, they're the same person over and over again. I don't know if Ed Norton's crazy, but if he was a little strange in real life, that wouldn't surprise me, considering how he's done.
He's in a
movies.
movie that didn't do well, but it's actually a phenomenal movie. Like if you watch it, phenomenal. That's not the right word. It is. It's one of those movies that you kind of have to. Every now and then, I like to watch movies where you're taking in multiple things, and the overall experience isn't as good as it. That's the overall. The movie was okay, but if you break up different things, like hey, the writing though, and this scene was, or the cinematography was. I mean, anything with Steven Soderbergh, you watch a Steven Soderbergh movie really for the visuals.
Right.
He's super into it, right? And some of them aren't that great. But it's called Death to Smoochie with
Really?
Robin Williams.
Yeah,
and
no, I'm familiar
Ed
with it,
Norton.
but I always avoided it because it's called Death to Smoochie.
It is. Robin Williams is phenomenal in that movie.
Okay.
This is super not safe for work movie, inappropriate. But Ed Norton in that movie, I can't even, it's so good. You
Okay.
got to watch it. And now what the problem is, I tell you it's so good. It's you're supposed to underpromise, overdeliver, right? So now you're going to be like, this movie wasn't that good. So you'll have to watch it probably 8 to 9 times before you're really.
So
about the 9th time it'll kick in.
I got to commit to our friendship here.
Yeah.
Like, I got to watch Death to Smoochie 8 or 9 times before I'm nodding the head.
It's that 7th mile, right? You got to get that 7th mile in. You know what I mean?
There is a wall, like in the distance running, like when you get to mile 10 and a half marathon, you still got a 5K to go. Or I had in the marathon we ran in Sacramento almost a year ago now. It was in December.
Wouldn't have been the American River Marathon, was it?
It was the California I don't know if it's International or California Invitational Marathon, but CIM, it's a huge marathon. It's like the 6th or 7th largest in the world. Very talented, very fast runners come to run this, and they qualify a lot of folks for Boston on that course because it's a net downhill. I mean, there are some hills, but it's a net downhill because you run from Folsom Lake to the state capitol. I'm cruising along. I'm ahead of pace. I'm feeling great, and then mile 19 and not proper intake of salt happened, and then I was just a stumbling fool for 7 miles. So the wall is a real thing in running, and apparently Death to Smoochie has a wall of about 6 or 7 viewings before it's good.
It's just you'll know what I mean. The writing, you think about this. Sometimes the things they don't land properly. There's a great interview with Bill Hader. I don't know if you know, he is a comedian. He was on SNL, just great voices. But they did a skit with Dana Carvey where they were Casey Kasem and his son. I think, what was his son's name? It was like Kasem or something. It was something. And he tells the story of him and Dana Carvey doing this, and he's doing the voices, and he can't keep a straight face, and he's laughing. And I've watched it several times, and I tear up laughing so hard. And they said, "Why didn't you film that?" And they go, "We did it. People were laughing in the reading earlier in the week.
Right.
We did it. Did great. I guess they do all the skits before Saturday Night Live. They do them like either earlier in the day or the day before in front of audiences to try to." And he goes, it was horrible. And he goes, as soon as he walked off, everyone's
just
like,
didn't translate
what
or something?
happened? Like, they're like, so they scrapped it. And I was like, oh my gosh. Him and Dana Carvey, I'm not even gonna try because I wouldn't do any justice, but sometimes things just don't land.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And sometimes they do. There's like a fine line between horrible and really good, right? Like the best humor lives at that line of inappropriate.
Right.
That's the
Totally.
best humor. So
It pushes the boundary, but to the point where the audience can tolerate it. And the best of them that are doing it are making a social commentary that you almost don't even realize they're making a commentary about how things are going until after the joke, or like you experience it in the joke. You know, Dave Chappelle is kind of like at the height of his power right now, commenting on social issues. And this is a guy probably from a pretty liberal worldview, certainly as compared to mine, but he's commenting on issues in a way that I'm like, see, everybody can see it. It's just strange right now. We live in a weird time.
You know, when the name Dave Chappelle comes out, lots of people say the GOAT of comedy. You know, he's up there. He's on the Mount Rushmore of comedy. He definitely has an incredible storytelling style. His comedy is so, I mean, you know, he brings it all the way back and reloops it and back. I mean, he's a phenomenal storyteller. If you look at his younger stuff, he wasn't. Something changed.
Right.
You know, but I guess that's just 10,000 hours or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Hopefully become a master. He can be really inappropriate, but I like Dave Attell. You ever heard Dave Attell?
I don't know Dave Attell.
Oh my goodness, he's got some.
Is that his real name, or is he just copying?
No, he's been around before Dave Chappelle. He's older.
okay.
I think Dave Chappelle actually said Dave Attell is his favorite comedian.
Okay.
He used to have a show on at night, and it was Insomniac or something like that.
I remember the title.
Yeah, and he'd go around bars. But he has this short quip humor.
Okay.
So he's not telling out the whole grand story and everything. So it's more of just like guitar riffs, just a bunch of stuff versus the
Super
symphony.
quick-witted guy.
Yeah, he just had a 29-minute special, so that tells you it's not very long, on Netflix, and definitely, again, not safe for work and inappropriate, but there's some stuff in there that, I mean, I'm spit taking, and I have to rewind it and spit take again. Kills me. So I love good comedy. It kind of was on life support for a while there. You know, the whole social justice thing really hammered the comedians. Yeah.
I don't understand how people who would say out of one side of their mouth that they are pro free speech would then act in such a way that what they mean is, I'm pro free speech, I agree with. I mean, the whole purpose of free speech is to have the ability to say things you don't agree with and to be offended. Like this idea that offense or that words are dangerous, like that was a thing that was thrown around a lot. Like words are violence, speech is violence. No, it's not. Violence is violence.
And then they were like, silence is violence. No,
yeah, they've never been exposed to real violence if they think silence is violence.
Anybody involved in that is, in my opinion, in one of two groups. Either they failed any form of logic, or they are what would be the right term, a bad actor. They are the puppet master. So you have people that will make these arguments that make no sense. They'll walk all the way, hey, you know, silence is violence and words are violence, and it's like, what?
Right.
So it's basically, so no matter what happens, I lose, right? Yeah, effectively, you got it. Let's just jump to the end. Or, you know, they don't get it, or they are the people that are running it. And I think about this all the time. I'm a conspiracy theorist. The people that know me, I'm total. I mean,
like how bad are we talking? Like moon landing's not real, or
I don't even care about stuff like that. Like I think a lot of our social ills that are going on in America right now are part of a psyop that's run by the intelligence community that President Eisenhower warned us of, the military-industrial complex. I don't think it has to be so Machiavellian where there's this like group. I just think that there's a bunch of motivations and alignments, you know, so you have the military industrial complex, I believe you have the police industrial complex, I believe you have the education industrial complex, and you have the pharma industrial complex and the food industrial. So what ends up happening is I don't see it as a round table of the most evil people getting together.
Right.
There's all these motivations in capitalism. And in capitalism, like I said earlier before, it can get to a point where profit over humanity. And once they cross that line, and it gets crossed all the time. When I was a kid, the big one was the famous Ford Pinto.
Right.
And they could have fixed it, but they said, hey, you know, an actuary said, well,
it's less expensive.
Yeah, we've done the math. You could just settle with the survivors and it'll actually cost you less. That to me as a child was one of the first times, and it was like shocking. I think that's, you know, 22 business days a month now. I think that's almost every company is just like, hey, you know, should we fix it? No, we can just start our lawyer, you know. Sorry.
No offense taken.
Our mathematician, actuarius lawyer says, no, let's just, And now that's just standard business practice in America. So if we go back to conspiracy, I mean, if you and I sit down in a business, right, or the three of us sit down and we're business owners and we say, hey, look, if we put titanium dioxide on the candy, it's more shiny and it's a carcinogen, but it's kind of addictive.
Right.
The kids will be taking this stuff off the shelf. We've just conspired. We've just come up with a plan to do something. And we don't go, hey, by the way, guys, just at the beginning of our commercial, we want to tell you we're putting titanium dioxide because, right? That kind of stuff happens all the time. So when I say conspiracy theory, that's what I'm talking about, that it's profit-driven. These companies rise up, these conglomerates or groups or unions or whatever it is, and they have a mission, and that mission is usually profit, and it sits above humanity. And if a bunch of kids are going to be pre-diabetic and a bunch of kids are going to have these problems and, your food source, and I love RFK Jr., I think he's right 90% of the time. I don't think he's right 100% of the time, but I think he's crushing it when he says, hey, our food supply is poisoned. Our medical system is very, very broken. And it's like, you don't have to have a PhD in anything to just go look and see it.
Right.
The numbers are overwhelming.
Well, the medical system is a good example because the personal injury lawyer's stock and trade is the medical records, the recommendations for future care, what's happened to the person, and having one of my favorite parts about my job is that I get to be the thing that I need for that case regularly. So if I need an engineer, or if I need a construction specialist, or if I need somebody who knows all about concrete or knows all about, magnetos in a helicopter, like there's an expert out there for those things. And
magnetos?
Yeah, no, not the guy who can control metal. It's a thing that creates spark for ignition in an internal combustion engine. But
because I'm also a Marvel geek.
Yeah,
old Marvel, not new Marvel.
Yeah, Gen 1, her first generation stuff that was coming to, yeah. That's a non-issue. We don't even go down that road.
We had a local that did that. You know that, right?
What?
You know that the demise was caused by a Shasta High School graduate.
Why? Our town has so many
Do you know who I'm talking about?
No.
Kathleen Kennedy went to Shasta High School.
Really?
She took over in Disney, and as soon as she takes over, it starts to crumble.
See, I went to Central Valley, so we just needed a good CV grad in there. That would have probably not helped. Okay.
Oh wow, that's a reach.
It's tough.
Right there. Right?
It's tough. But yeah, this idea that I get to be an expert, and a lot of times I get to be not an expert. That's not fair. But I get to learn a lot more than I should know about this particular thing, and so I get to look at the medical system. We have the most expensive healthcare system in the world, and yet we do not have the best outcomes in the world, and we have a declining life expectancy. And these are complex problems which are not subject to populist sound bites to resolution, and they're not subject to easy fixes because they're like systemic, like what you're talking about way back at the core. Like how about we take care of ourselves better? How about we take a little responsibility for ourselves? How about we not look for a solution in a pill? And so some of the things
How dare you, sir?
I know.
How dare you?
Okay, but okay, so there's this great line. Ooh.
I wonder if anybody will know who that was my impersonation of. How dare you?
Yeah, I got nothing.
Greta.
Oh, okay.
How dare you?
Greta Thunberg?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
She's getting on her G5 to fly somewhere to tell people to stop burning coal.
As I prepared for a podcast today, I thought, don't say anything you're going to regret. So I'm going to stop talking about Greta, or I'll say something I'll regret.
Okay.
But with respect to this issue of our healthcare, it intersects with the law, and that brings us back to the movies, which is there's this great line at the end of the movie, The Devil's Advocate.
Oh yeah.
The premise is that Keanu Reeves is this talented trial attorney, and it turns out that the devil, as played by Al Pacino, is his
very well, I might add,
great as his father, and he presents himself as a news reporter, so he does not look like the devil anymore. Or maybe he does look like the devil. I can't remember. It's too long. It's the end of the movie.
No, he's asked, the young reporter.
Okay, he's asked the question. He's like, why the law? And his answer is because the law gets us into everything, which brings us back to this issue of wanting a solution in a pill. It used to be illegal to advertise drugs on TV in the United States.
It should be. We're only two countries, United States and New Zealand.
New Zealand, right.
Yeah,
you could do
shouldn't
that.
have it.
So when I want to say, apologies to Prilosec if I'm wrong, but when Prilosec, which is like a gastroesophageal reflux disease, heartburn, acid in your stomach medication, when it first came out on the market, there was this huge advertising campaign, and it was ask your doctor if the purple pill is right for you. I mean, this has got to be 25 years ago, something like that, late 90s maybe. People were going to their doctors and asking for the purple pill who did not have like heartburn or gastroesophageal reflux disease. They just wanted that purple pill. It's got to be good, right? So we've been, sort of institutionalized as a culture that the solution is at the doctor and is at the pharmacy. Not that there's not amazing, one of my kids, I got a daughter who's in the medical field. One of my other daughter wants to be in the medical field. One of my kids is a pre-med major. So I have nothing against the medical field or against pharmacology.
I love how we have to qualify everything too.
Boy, don't you though?
Yeah, I mean, I want to. Even though you're a lawyer, we all have to do it now.
But what I want to say to those people is the same thing that I tried to say to my father, which is, man, the solution to this problem was 20 years ago. It was not sitting down for the last 20 years. It was not eating everything in sight for the last 20 years. It was not believing the sugar industry, right, which commissioned studies to talk about how bad fat was. Meanwhile, they're just piling sugar into everything, right? Because it's good for business.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I agree with you that there's not probably this, like movie scene archetypal group of Austin Powers villains around a table, but there are certain motivations.
There might be.
It's kind of fun to think about it.
Let's just assume.
It is more fun if they're patting like a hairless cat, kind of in a chair, not unlike these, Joey. Anyways, but there are these market motivations that cause companies to do things like when Vioxx got taken off the market, and it was a lot cheaper to, the company still profited billions of dollars even after paying out settlements and massive fines imposed by the government after, trials and so on. They profited on Vioxx. People died, but they profited anyways.
I think of two things. Two things keep popping into my head. One is Brett Weinstein. He made this statement, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and I heard
He's obviously a hyper-conservative, crazy. Oh, wait, no, he taught at Evergreen. Anyways, go on.
What he said is a system is designed to produce whatever it produces. Now, it seems so like, well, yeah, duh, okay. But just take it in for a minute. So if you see, a bunch of people go into Congress, Senate, and they make basically a principal superintendent salary, $139,000 to $200,000 a year, depending, and they all come out super millionaires. And then you wonder why the average person isn't represented. It's that system is designed to do that. The way that we're practicing capitalism is designed to produce exactly what we're seeing. The other thing I think about is that there's a saying goes something like this: small minds discuss people, mediocre minds discuss events, great minds discuss ideas. So if we to me, that's talking about abstract. So one thing I try not to do is I try not to talk about people. I don't care who's running for president. I don't think it doesn't matter who gets elected because of the system. It doesn't matter if somebody comes or goes because people have come and gone for a long time, and the system moves on. So the system, that's why I say the first part is Brett. We have to start thinking more abstractly and start addressing the system. Going back to the core thing of saying like, hey, I don't care. Oh, don't you hate this politician? Don't you love that politician? I don't care. I know that this system is going to attract and promote the worst kind of people. It's going to attract and promote people that score very well on the psychopathy chart, right? That's what we have. We have a system designed to do that. And this is the byproduct of it. How to fix it? I don't know. I mean, it's a juggernaut.
I'll run an idea by you since you laid out the hierarchy of thinking. Let's just shoot for the top.
Let's go with it.
Let's talk about ideas.
Make me benevolent dictator for life. Sold. I'll do it.
The problem is I would not be benevolent for the first several weeks because
I didn't say you. I said me.
Well,
show some respect. I'm the dictator.
I'll be benevolent after a minute, but the people who got it coming are going to get it, so that everybody knows I'm real serious about it. But that's very Machiavellian of me, and I do have certain political appetites, so maybe I am on the psychopathy chart that you referenced. But
you struck me.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons, though, that I've talked to this. My wife is a private person, so she's sort of mortified that I'm even on a podcast, and that I've said, that I'm married, and that people could find out, like, oh my gosh, I'm married to this particular person. Like, that would not be her. She's a private person. So one of the things that has detracted me from political opportunities is the fact that I don't want to expose my bride and my family to the sort of the putrid discussion. There's no gentlemanly discussions. We don't disagree. Like, I could take somebody who's a polar opposite from me in terms of their worldview, and I can sit down and have a civil conversation with them. But that doesn't get a lot of eyeballs on. That doesn't get a lot of advertising. I mean, that's part of the hard sales pitch for the conservative side is that they want to conserve things. Like, that's not nearly as exciting as I want to change everything, and it's going to be great tomorrow. Just trust me, elect me, and it'll be amazing. Whereas a conservative is like, we're going to keep the good stuff. Crickets. That's a harder marketing pitch. The original senators, representatives in Congress were people who had to make a living doing something other than being a senator or a member of the House of Representatives. They had to run the farm. It was largely agrarian society. They had to run business. They had to run their publishing company, whatever it happened to be. They had to do that. And so they went back. They went back to their home district. They did not live in D.C. as much as our current politicians live in D.C.
Close to the lobbyists.
Right. Yeah, right next
Got to
to
be real close to them.
So I think the solution here is a solution that we certainly apply to the executive, right? So if it's good for the president, the single most powerful office in the land,
really,
why is it not good for the other 435 members?
Because they vote on whether or not it's good enough.
Yeah, right. So I think term limits is a great way to prevent this entrenched bureaucracy, this fourth branch of government that are these unelected sort of bureaucrats. Let's just turn the pile a little bit, and let's, this person was great, and let's continue their stuff. And this person was bad. Thank God we got rid of them. They were only there 6 years.
No, I think we need a few different things to change. I think that there's a few things we could change, like you said, term limits. I think would help. So somebody can't get in there and spend 40 years, and
right.
And
leave a multi-millionaire while making a relatively, not that it's not a good salary, but it's relatively modest in our modern economy.
It's not 40 million.
Right.
There's something else going on to turn 190,000 into 40 million.
Right.
I think the other thing is having them to where we can be decentralized now. You guys don't need to meet in DC. You can meet online. You need to live among your constituents. Right. You need to live. If you represent Wyoming, you need to live in Wyoming. You need to live amongst the people. Then I think that would help with lobbying, because now you've added that cost to lobbying. Right now they just go down all their your target audience is in one place. Now it's distributed. That would help. But I also think that there has to be something done with the campaign finance reform, something where the money just can't get in there. Problem is, we're asking the fox to police himself.
Right.
He's not going
Guard
to.
the hen house.
Okay, so the system is not designed to fix itself. It's not designed. And so that's why I say I don't know how we would fix that.
The campaign finance reform thing is difficult because it's tied with free speech. And people are a little inartful.
I know that whole Supreme Court thing where they were like, a corporation is that.
Yeah, but what's happening here is what needs to happen across the political aisle much more frequently. Yeah, you and I are pretty aligned, I think, in terms of
it's real easy when the guy across from you agrees on 95% of stuff. I wouldn't run, though.
But I wouldn't drink that orange juice that tasted like grass either. So we have our differences.
Touche.
So anyways, you can go back to the 90s, right? And you had a Republican-controlled Congress, and then you had a Democrat in the White House.
Bill Clinton.
And you were able to get a balanced budget. The closest thing, I love that the government busts people for Ponzi schemes and then engages in a Ponzi scheme every day, but that's a different dynamic.
Stock market?
Yeah, well, or taking in money today to pay debts from yesterday. That's the definition of a Ponzi scheme, and that's what we do in our social support systems. People from different sides of the aisle were able to balance a budget and didn't just shout at each other and didn't demonize the other guy. Now, I don't romance the history. We did have a man, I'm not sure if he was beaten to death, but I think he was beaten to death on the floor of Congress with a cane, 200 years ago, right around 1800. That is a part of American history. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, that's a thing. So there has been assaults in the House. I'm not suggesting that everybody's going to hug it out, but people ought to talk more and worry less about that 1 minute soundbite. But this idea of campaigning, I ought to be able to say who I support, and I ought to be able to say who I support with my pocketbook. The problem is then you can really sway elections, and people don't realize how swayed they are until you realize, like YouTube. I don't have any social media. I don't have any social media accounts, but YouTube's the closest thing I do. And so I'll find, I see a short, or YouTube figures me out pretty quick. It knows, I like cars, I like jujitsu, it knows I like certain things. And so pretty soon it's feeding me. And then pretty soon it's feeding me stuff that I'm like, that kind of I don't like that, and then I'm on it a little longer. So this idea of money in a campaign, when you're getting stuff that you don't even realize you're being played. And I think I'm pretty aware of that. I think I'm pretty ready to get played. I think I'm pretty, on my game with respect to that. I don't know the vast majority, but if I can get, sort of engaged, anybody can get engaged because I'm sort of ensconced to those things. I don't know how you solve that problem from a campaign finance reform where you balance those competing interests of being able to freely support who you want, including putting your money behind it. But on the other hand, just flatly gaming the system.
Yeah, I that's why I said I don't know how to fix it. I mean, I could throw some things out, like we said, campaign finance reform, term limits, some other things, but it just feels like the system, there's too much money and power behind gaming the system. And so I don't know how you have a grassroots in today's society. You know, the American Revolution. Man, that is a completely different time.
Right.
We have to come up with new mechanisms. I don't know. I don't know what it looks like. I try not to think about it because it becomes one of those, like, when you can't solve, that's frustration.
Right.
Right? I don't want that.
Well, you were talking about a dietary fast earlier. Sometimes, I'll have to take like a news and media fast, and I just read books that are interesting to me. It could be.
You reading any good ones now?
I just finished a great book, The Road by Cormac McCarthy. It's probably
Fiction?
15 years old. Yeah, 16 years old now. He's a great writer. His
Post-apocalyptic type thing?
Yeah, you got it. There was a movie made of it. Have not started the movie, haven't finished it, but the book is incredible. It's just a story. It's no chapters.
Can I tell you how it ends?
No, I finished it. It's a great book.
It.
I've read other.
It was a dream.
Other of his work, and it's great stuff. Just finished that, and then I'm reading a book. My father was a submariner when he was in the Navy, and so I'm reading a book called Blind Man's Bluff.
Oh, wow.
Which was just like, we just stood on the edge of nuclear annihilation for so long, and there's this whole untold story of the battle under the water between the USSR and the United States, and it's super interesting. And those sailors that were on those early boats, what a brutal existence. Everything smelled like diesel. You were covered in diesel. They would depth charge you to keep you down so that you couldn't charge batteries, run them off the diesel engine. So you just started to suffocate on diesel fumes and no oxygen. Like, just hard men. Great book. So that's what's on the nightstand right now. Oh, and then magazines with elk hunting stuff. That's what's up there.
Well, good. You need to get ready because your game's about to be tested, so you need to be sharp. Hey, I've really appreciated you coming on. I don't know if we got to talk as much about lawyering, but I think you're a really good lawyer.
Oh, I appreciate that.
You got me to think about some of the stuff you said, and I could tell by the way you were doing it, the telling the story, laying it out, kind of guiding the person through. So there's got to be like some heavy duty psychology going on there. I was expecting the books you read were more of like, something to do with Hannibal Lecter or something.
Oh, yeah. No, I suppose the trial lawyer's stock and trade is convincing people, or at a minimum getting people to
maybe 12 people?
Yeah, maybe 12. A couple of alternates. Judge, if you can, is to, at a minimum, get people to see your side of it and recognize the risk that if they're wrong. And I think that applies across every platform that we've discussed today, whether it's been, parenting, society, health, politics, lawyering, is that you have to recognize, what happens if I'm wrong? What happens if I lose? What happens if that opponent has something to say? And my job as an attorney is to figure out a counter to every argument they might come up with and be ready for it and, prosecute my client's case to the fullest. But I can't do that if I just stand there and shout the other side's wrong. Like, I have to consider what they're doing. And I really actually love being against a good lawyer on the other side, because you got to up your game. And so, this conversation has been wonderful because we just got to go through all of those things. But the approach to solving those problems isn't different, whether it's in the courtroom or whether it's at the dinner table.
A friend of the family is going to school. I wish I could remember what the degree is. There's a name for it, but he's going to a school and they don't have grades like traditional grades. You find out your grade at the end of the semester, and he's studying Socrates and Plato, and it's a common degree, I guess, if you were going to go to law school. But the whole point is he's going to spend 4 years in philosophy and logic. And so it's not philosophy, but it's, you're kind of in that realm, and they have a name for it, some great Latin
rhetoric,
name.
maybe.
I thought maybe it's something. I thought, but anyway, he wants
twice.
to.
Going back to baseball, it's 2 strikes right now. I'm sitting on 2 strikes.
He wants to go to law school, and just talking to him, and you can see it. It's like a really good thing. He's really opening up his mind and being able to see both sides so that he can make a great argument or counter argument. And that's what, like when you were talking about, like, you have to know your opponent. You have to be prepared, hey, that's a Sicilian Open. Okay, well then what I'll do is,
right.
That game of chess, you have to be open-minded.
I didn't know that was a chess reference, by the way. I didn't strike out. I got that.
Good. Okay.
Yeah. No, we don't spend enough time thinking about why we think what we think. And if you don't work that out, you just become an ideologue. You ought to know what...
Especially if you build a nice little echo chamber.
Yeah, right.
To just reinforce
you just consume the media and the people and the information that you like. One thing that I'm very fortunate to have in my life is a handful of people that I can trust to tell me I'm absolutely full of it, and that they
You're welcome.
Thank you, Joey. And that they will, because you create your own echo chamber in your head. That's a good idea. Sometimes my business partner, I'll go in, I love this idea I've come up with. I've cooked it for 30 seconds in my brain. I march into his office. I'm like, let's try this strategy in this case. And he's like, that's not the best idea. Let's work that out a little bit, and vice versa, right? That's why it's great having a good business partner or a good legal practice partner is to work those things out. People don't spend enough time thinking about why they think what they think.
Man, that's heavy. Just thinking about that, like, why do we think what we think, and how much of it? It's like, I would pride myself in being some type of free thinker, but the truth is that I'm programmed. I was programmed as a child to believe certain things. We live in America. We believe certain things. Then there's the daily programming. I find myself every now and then getting frustrated, and like a little voice will be like, "Hey, man, you're getting distracted." That's the whole point. You want it. This is all a distraction to keep you from doing things that would benefit you. Right? Like go for a walk, drink water, work out, read a book, grow some food. These are the things but all of this is just a big distraction. That's why and back to me being a conspiracy theorist, I'm like, it's a psyop. It's all a psyop. I think a lot of the social things that we're talking about right now, I mean, this is, I don't care about the moon landing, so I have to give that before I start. Right. But I think a lot of
I still want to be an astronaut. So like the moon landing is real, just so we're clear.
Okay. I don't give much thought, but I've heard people argue both sides, and I don't care enough to even I lost my train of thought. I was going somewhere.
Conspiracy theory.
Yes, thank you.
Psyop.
Society, the puppy society. Anyway, I think that a lot of these social ills go back to those entities I was talking about, and that because it doesn't make sense that we get so distracted on things over here that, number one, we can't control, while there's stuff over here that we should control, we should be fixated on, like our economy, like our debt, like the health of our children, like our future. These things matter versus a lot of the stuff over here doesn't matter. And we keep getting this pushed down our throat. And I can't help but feel like maybe it's just, I used to think, because AI has been among us for some time now. People think, oh, we're on the edge of AI. AI has been in play that I know of since 2015. AI kicked in big time in 2016. And when I say that, it's with it's not the formal definition of AI, but AI in our digital advertising space.
Yeah.
Right? The optimization back to you get triggered, and so it shows you more stuff to get you triggered, to get you more stuff. So it could be completely innocuous, like it just happened. That's probably not the right word, but it's not like somebody's like, okay, look, this is how we're going to make the AI do this. Like, look, we're just trying to maximize profits, and look at how we can maximize profits. The same type of thing. Let's say, hey, and this will get them. Go ask your doctor about the purple pill.
Yeah, the purple pill.
But you don't have any of the symptoms. Yeah, but I got to ask my doctor, right? I think that same mechanism can be in play. And I think that that's where a lot of these ills that we're talking about, and somehow we keep getting distracted. Something keeps pushing us over here, right? I think it might be AI. I think it might have, and I don't mean it a bad way, but I mean, it's just by it figuring out, oh, I know what humans like.
Right.
You're gonna do that. Okay, I'll give you stuff that makes your blood pressure go up if that's what you want, as long as you'll stay on, because I've been programmed to keep you here.
Right.
And that's why Elon Musk, back in the day when he was talking about his fear of AI, his thing was, he gave the example of the paperclip machine. I don't know if you remember this. He's like, you have AI and it's running a paperclip machine in a factory, and it decides it'll just kill all the humans. Why? Well, because it needs to fulfill the needs of paperclips on the planet. And it goes, wait a second. Well, if there were no humans, there'd be no need. Haha, I've got the solution. I'll just kill all the humans. Great.
Right.
And he was trying to make an example of how you don't know where it's going to go.
Right.
I feel like a lot of this stuff, the digital advertising machines, they've been run by an undercurrent machine learning system that we would refer to as AI. And at that same time, everything started to really go off the rails.
Well, we have a really
That was a long one.
great history as people of not even being able to necessarily conceptualize the unintended consequences. So, I mean, your AI story is a paperclip machine. My favorite one is AI was given the task of getting through a CAPTCHA thing. You have to which one of these 9 squares has a bike in it, and the AI bot couldn't do it. So the AI bot clicked, ask for help, and then person came on and said, I see you're having trouble with this. How can I help you? And the AI figured out, to tell them I'm visually impaired. I can't do a CAPTCHA. So I figured out a way to solve the problem, because the programmer was to get this thing through the CAPTCHA system, and was trying to get it to optically recognize which of the squares had bikes in them or whatever the thing was, and so it couldn't do it, and so it found an alternate solution. That is an unintended consequence of AI. But to your point about why is everybody talking about these like sort of tangential or fringe issues? Well, we really like things that we can grab a hold of and we can think about, and this is our thing, whatever. Take the border wall, for example. Like, everybody can sort of conceptualize a big wall that divides two spaces, but neither candidate is talking about a $30 trillion debt. And
I think it's 34.
Okay, 34. Well, it's been 7 minutes since I looked it up, because that's probably what happened. So nobody's talking about a debt. And, that.
And what does that mean to us?
Well, probably to Joey and Griff, nothing, but to Joey and Griff's children. And if we say what we mean, I love my children, then I wouldn't saddle them with debt. I mean, if you think it at a personal level, my wife and I, we take extravagant vacations, we drive fancy cars, and we're not going to pay for any of it. And our kids are going to get saddled with that debt because we're going to die. So who cares? We had a good life. That's actually what we're doing as a society, but nobody's talking about it in those blunt terms, because it doesn't sell. It doesn't get you elected. It doesn't get you into the White House. It's a very difficult problem to solve. People talk about like, oh, well, we've got to take the waste out of the government. Like, if you took all the waste out of the government, it doesn't make a dent. If you look at the pie chart, it's Social Security, Medicare, the defense budget is almost the entire federal budget. So unless you're going to talk about what do you do with defense spending, Social Security spending, and Medicare spending, you're not going to solve the national debt. And those things are political killers. You cannot get elected if you talk about pushing out the retirement age or reducing benefits or reducing defense spending. You just can't. So it's a very difficult problem to solve, and it is utterly unattractive to talk about it at a political level.
Thus, me saying I don't know how it gets solved. I don't.
That's why we turn off social media, we get our cows, we get some chickens. That's the gateway to freedom, right? Because they just make these little perfect nuggets of protein and fat every day, and you just go out and pick them up. And you love your kids, love your wife, and love the Lord your God.
I think we close on that one. Thank you so much. My hands are sweaty, but I appreciate you coming in.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I'll see you next time.